Joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Sharice Davids of Kansas. She won her party's primary last night, albeit running uncontested. But the big story was the defeat of the proposed constitutional amendment that would have removed language enshrining reproductive rights in the state. So, Sharice, what did we learn from Kansas last night?
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, I'm definitely glad to be the Democratic nominee for the Kansas 3rd, especially, and maybe we'll get to it, especially as we see people with extreme views like my opponent running. But I think what we saw last night here in Kansas was this was a win for Kansans, for Kansas families, for our rights. And we saw a broad, diverse coalition of groups coming together to fight an amendment and what it stood for, which was really increased government control over our healthcare decisions. And, you know, we saw that Kansans resoundingly rejected that extreme position last night.
And Congresswoman, you're right. It was resounding 59 to 41%. It passed. And also, Steve Kornacki was just walking us through the turnout numbers, which were just extraordinary for a midsummer primary election, pushing up toward 1 million votes last night, 910,000 or so right now, bumping up toward presidential election year numbers. What did you make of that, just the turnout, the people who went out to vote yesterday?
Yeah, you know, I think that a couple of things that I believe led to that. One was, you know, when the Dobbs decision came down, I think we saw this across the country, but I can tell you here in the Kansas 3rd, I saw it and I heard from people. People were scared and had tons of anxiety for them, for their kids, for their grandkids. And I think rightfully so. You know, we have seen we've in Kansas, we've been watching these extreme total bans without exception passing in our neighboring states, Missouri, Oklahoma, and people were, I mean, we picked ourselves up, dusted ourselves off, and got to work, which is what we do out here in Kansas. And I think that I hope that people can see that getting engaged and making sure that you're making your voice heard. People were knocking on doors and making phone calls. There was so much energy, and I've heard the word excitement used as it relates to our win last night. But it wasn't just that. It was relief. The number of people that had their kids there, and knowing that their kids, at least in Kansas, we were able to retain the rights that we've had here under our state constitution for so long.
Congresswoman, because House districts are so gerrymandered, it's always fascinating. We always love to talk to somebody who's actually in a seat that may be competitive, because you're on the front lines, you and about 25, 30 other Democrats. And so I always want to know, what are you hearing out there when you're knocking on doors, when you're shaking hands, when you're going around Kansas' 3rd district, a swing district? What is foremost on voters' minds?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, for the last few weeks, the answer is pretty clear that I was definitely hearing a lot about this constitutional amendment, about the impacts of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And I also, you mentioned this, the redistricting. Which has absolutely impacted the Kansas 3rd. I now have a more rural district than I had previously. And so, you know, the impact that has had is I'm learning a lot about ag. I got onto the agriculture committee recently. But also, I'm still hearing a lot about rising costs. You know, folks are talking to me about gas prices. I was out in Anderson County, Kansas, hearing from people who are dealing with fertilizer that costs 5 times more than it did last year. And I'd encourage folks to follow along what we've got going on out here in Kansas. You can follow me on Twitter at Sharice Davids.
All right, Congresswoman Sharice Davids, at Sharice Davids. Thank you so much for being on. We really appreciate it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And now...